That will be speaking about the afterlife of buildings. Και τώρα, κυρίες και κύριοι, στη σκηνή μας έχουμε τον Πάνο Σακά, την Εύη Διαμαντοπούλου, τον Τζάφερ Κόλπ και τον Γιώργο Μητρούλια, στο πάνελ με θέμα New Lives, που θα συντονίσουν ο Ηλίας Μεσίνας και η Σάρα Κολάτα. Ακολουθώντας το ίδιο φυσικό ένστικτο της επιβίωσης του ανθρώπου μαζί με τον πλανήτη, υπάρχει ανάγκη να δώσουμε νέα ζωή στα υλικά που έχουν ολοκληρώσει τον κύκλο της πρώτης χρήσης τους, μέσω του σχεδιασμού, της τεχνολογίας και της δεξιοτεχνίας. Νέα εργαλεία μας φέρνουν νέες δυνατότητες, όπως θα δούμε από τους εκπροσώπους των γραφείων The New Raw, New Affiliates και Area, που εργάζονται σε διαφορετικά γεωγραφικά και πολιτιστικά περιβάλλοντα.
Καλησπέρα και πάλι. Ευχαριστούμε, Δανάη. We will do this panel in English. Now, the point where the past meets the future is the point where our buildings or design is taking form. We form the future by our present decisions. To give new life to a building or an object does not only serve the urban space, it also adds another layer in the community narrative. Our work becomes more meaningful because it's a natural continuity of something familiar. New life of buildings and materials requires often more of a human touch or a human scale of things. The human touch and the traditional crafts have the wisdom of sustainability. They are labor-intensive but provide more creative work and much less energy. Old buildings and materials are made to last. We just need to give them new life and new meaning. Sometimes discover what's hiding under recent layers, or we may find other materials to match what's missing. We can give new life to street benches and thus renew the public space and make it more inviting. We can also give new life to parking lots and turn them into hybrid parks. This is a project done by the team of Thomas Doxiadis at Eco Week. We can give new life also to the open space and create new playgrounds for a kindergarten by giving new life to tires and other reused materials. We can discover value in waste materials by providing new raw materials by cleaning up the environment. And we can give new life to the open public space by creating places for people. For example, an outdoor community library for a community center in Israel at a very low cost. Most important, as cities become more dense, we can give new life to urban parks, which are also becoming much more needed, with very light interventions and with new life to old materials. And now we'll speak about new life with our panelists. I'm joined by Sara Colatta. Sara, thank you for joining. Sara is an architect and entrepreneur, helping architects grow their business. And Sara, would you like to introduce our speakers?
With pleasure. So first we have Panos Sakas. He's an architect, and together with Fotini Sataki, he's a founder of New Raw in the Netherlands. Next, we welcome to stage Ivy Diamantopoulou and Jaffer Kolp, architects and founders of New Affiliates from New York. And lastly, Yorgos Mitroulias, architect and founder of Area.
Okay, we'll start with the first question, which is about methodology and approach. How do you start designing? What factors drive the design? Is it the material? Is it the location? The existing building or the frame of a building? Is it the climate? In other words, give us a very short introduction about your practice. And we'll start with George.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us here. So all the aspects you mentioned are, very important, and depending on the project, it all comes in the process. But if I would describe, what we do, with a word, maybe I would use the word dialogue. I think it's a Greek word, and we love to discuss. Dialogue means, you have a lot of people engaged in a project. We are a team of architects. It's not just one person deciding. And now the important thing is how to do a dialogue, because discussion doesn't always help. We can all discuss things and then we mean different things. So I think that for us, we put a lot of effort in the representational aspect of architecture. So we do a lot of diagrams, a lot of physical models. I think that's very important also, and that facilitates a dialogue from the very beginning to the very end. And it also facilitates a dialogue between us and clients or us and a community. It's amazing how people can react to a physical model. It really, even before the project becomes a reality, a physical model can really give you a glimpse of the magic of architecture, even for the person that is not an expert.
Great. How about you, Panos?
Yes, I mean, with the new RAW since 2016, we've been using design thinking and robots to grasp plastic waste. And we do that through our own design methodology and our fabrication technique that we have developed in-house, and we continue developing it. Of course, both principals, me and Fotinis Setaki, we are architects, but what we are doing is a small scale for architecture. Nevertheless, for object makers, it's large scale. So in that sense, all our, let's say, in all our projects, from material to object scale, we try to change the perception that we have about, let's say, existing standards, and try to create new narratives with objects that have a strong storytelling. Each task that we get, we treat it as a research project. Either it is a commission, or it's a collaboration, or it is something like a product development. But having said that, we do a lot. We really strongly believe in learning by doing. So from sketches to maquettes, prototypes, and final object, we do a lot of trials and errors, a lot.
Oh, great. And Jaffer?
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation. Thank you for having both of us here. This is a great opportunity. So first off, Yorgos stole my answer completely. I had only written one word, and it was dialogue, so I have to now reconsider. Otherwise, I'm just cheating. But yeah, look, I think for us, methodologically, our practice, New Affiliates, which we also started in 2016, you stole my other answer, always begins with kind of a phone call, and it always begins with a conversation. We believe that architecture is inherently and kind of ontologically a social set of social relations. It's a social medium. It's a social practice. So for us, that starts at concept, in discussing with our clients. It goes through design development, where we discuss with experts and sub-consultants, and finally through construction documentation, where we talk to our general contractors. The other thing that we really try and do is, and this is a touchstone for us as a practice, is think about architecture as a kind of anthropological process or practice. So for us, that means embedding ourselves within a kind of network of actors that basically build off of some sense of context, which might be a material context. It might be about how a project is typically run, in a certain program or in a site that we're working in. So one example that I was thinking of, I think the clock's a little off, so I'll wrap up in just a few seconds. One example that I was thinking of is that we have a new project that we just kind of kicked off a couple weeks ago, and our clients, we went upstate in New York. We're based in New York City, and we went upstate to go visit this site of land, and I think our clients were so excited that we'd show up with our little sketchbooks and that we'd start immediately sketching ideas of form, and our first thought was like, oh, we have to call the civic engineer, we have to find out about plumbing, we have to find out about electricity. And they were, I think, a little disappointed because we weren't really performing the role that they thought we were going to. But in the end, what we do is create a context for ourselves to then kind of operate within. And the more constraints, the better. So we put ourselves in a straitjacket, and then we try and solve from there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this answer. Next question, I think it's really important to ask why. Why New Life? If design, technology, international markets today give us so much freedom to create new buildings, why give new life to something that already exists? What drives new life? Let's start with Evie.
This feels a little bit like a trick question. Because on the one hand, right, there is an obvious answer. It feels like the ethical thing to do. We're all very much aware that when we toss things or when we trash them, they just don't disappear, right? They go somewhere, they accumulate. And we come from a sort of ethos of ecology that taught us to reduce, to reuse, to recycle, and that's a little problematic, right? Because there is opportunity hiding within those actions. Like being ecological, it's not only about being constrained and like restraining yourself, but it is about opening up opportunities and working with unexpected material, right? So there's something really exciting in not working with, in America, and I apologize because I'm Greek and I just have been brainwashed on the other side of the pond, but in America, everything comes in a 4x8 sheet. Like anything you design, like no matter what it is that you're looking to make, you still have to start from the same module. So when you are reusing, you're confronted with the challenge of, oh, wait, this has an irregular edge, right? It's both annoying, but also a good prompt to imagine things new.
Yeah, thank you, Evie. George, what is your take on this?
No, Evie stole my answer. But
we should rehearse this, I think.
I would say that, first of all, I don't believe in the idea that the free market and technology is going to liberate us. I think that there's always limitations, and limitations are a good thing, because as long as you know that they are there, and if you know that they are there, then you can work against them, or work with them, or work to subvert them. So limitations are a good thing, and it's a way to define freedom, through limitations. So reuse is a limitation, because we have grown up, like my generation has grown up thinking, okay, your shoes are a little bit off brand, you can throw them away and buy new ones, and this lifestyle is very deeply within our society, but the planet is suffering. So reuse is a limitation, because you suddenly have to work with something that exists. You suddenly have to limit all your choices into maybe one or two. But that is an amazing creative opportunity, and I think that is, for me, that is true freedom.
Great answer. And Panos, what's your take on New Life?
Yes, I mean, we are in the New York, we are in the New Life business, so we are recycling and upcycling, better said, plastic waste. But it's more about the life cycle, so it's more about like thinking and planning how we can integrate what we are doing in a cycle. So where the things that we are using are coming from, materials, and where the objects, because in our case we are working with objects, are going to end up. Having said that, of course, it's important to know that what we do will not last forever. So it's always good to be able to, let's say, prepare and plan afterwards. And in our case, what we are doing we are also working it on a material, let's say, level. So we try to create things that they are all made out of one material, so they can be easier, let's say, sorted out afterwards and crushed. So try to achieve, in a sense, different qualities with one material, not using glues, not making, let's say, the afterlife process challenging.
Great. Now, I will connect with what George said about challenge. Now, design is full of challenges, and as architects, we look for challenges. How does reuse create new challenges and opportunities for design innovation? I will start with Panos.
So of course there are opportunities, because it's something new, but I think it's more important to find like what is the challenge you want to deal with by reusing. So in our sense, in our practice, what we are trying to do is we try to let's say create value. So through reuse, create value, and we try to do that either with environmental impact or with a social impact. So for instance. Yeah, I mean, it should be another video, but I can talk about this project. We had started a project in 2017 from a bottom-up, let's say, initiative of us, tried to focus on fishing nets, like a very challenging, let's say, material waste that people don't know about it, but it's ending up wasted. And after a collaboration with the Katerina Skadridi Foundation, and just for the creation of a video, we managed to actually build, let's say, the conditions, so a new company would be created, not by us, but by our clients, that they would actually create a network of collecting fishing nets all around, let's say, Greece. So for us, this is really a big social and environmental impact. In that sense, also, it's always important not only to work on the material, but also with the storytelling. So with what we are doing, we are trying to create questions, we're trying to create dialogue, like what it is, why it's that, and try to connect the dots. In 2016, when we were talking about plastic waste or plastic pollution, you had to talk a lot about it. After 6 years, the awareness is already there. So now it's a moment that you can actually talk about something new through the project.
Great. And Jaffer?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say we don't look for challenges. We try and avoid a sort of practice that's centered on a kind of laborious invention of kind of like workflow, and we try and take the easy way out generally. And actually working a lot in New York, that means adaptive reuse. It means kind of material invention around trying to keep things from over-circulating, right? So here's a Venn diagram in which ethics overlaps with ease, maybe, and that's the kind of territory that we like to operate within. I think that said, within the practice of architecture, particularly in sort of drawing through building, there isn't necessarily a tradition that we can inherit about how to document what exists and what you propose at the same time. There are obviously certain conventions that one can use, but here's where we have found the need to innovate, to use your word, I think, to try and rework how drawing architecture leads to different practices through construction that feel less wasteful and feel less laborious. So for us, in a lot of our projects, it means really just trying to draw through things and draw what's proposed, what's existing, and how to create new hybrids and syntheses between the two.
Well, great. And George, how about you?
You were talking about innovation, I think, in your question.
Innovation,
and,
challenge, opportunity.
So many loaded words. For me, I understand innovation as something that is not outside of history. Innovation always happens within the line of history. And if we look at the way the cities have developed the last 20 years, I mean, my generation, maybe previous generations can look at previous decades, but I think that there is a tendency, the economy, the globalized market, digital technology especially, create homogeneity, have the tendency to create homogeneity. You see a high-rise in London, and you see the same thing happening in Athens, for example. So this tendency of homogeneity, I think we have to resist, and we have to somehow strive for diversity. And reuse helps a lot, because reuse somehow connects us with the past, creates this continuity, and I think that is a very good, when it is possible, and usually it's always possible, but when you find the right ears, to listen, I think that it's a great way to create continuity, to create a narrative that connects us all to a place.
Thank you for this. I actually want to dig deeper into this concept of reuse. As architects, we seek freedom to be creative. How to reuse older materials to create new opportunities for creativity in design? Let's start with you, George.
Well, in Greece, the building industry is not very developed. Like, we saw amazing examples from Spain and Holland, and it's not the same reality. We really have to create the road here from scratch, I feel sometimes. And I remember when we did this project with an artist, Celine Condorelli, it was funded actually by Stegi, by Onassis Foundation. It was to create this open-air theater in Agricultural University of Athens. And the artist wanted to create sort of an observatory, but also an open-air theater in the middle of the garden of the Agricultural University. And she was interested in recycling something, reusing something, and we didn't know where to start. So we started looking around the Agricultural University. We went to Ieraodos, and there are all these madres with demolition material, and we found the stairs that we all know from old houses in Athens. And these metallic stairs, if you take them out of the city and you put them, in the middle of an orange grove, they become something totally different. They become, they start to raise the question of, what is the city and what is the countryside, what is natural and what is man-made. And it was, for us, it was very satisfying, such a small project, to be embraced by the students, and it's still operating as an open-air theater for them outside of the exhibition.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for this example. Panos, would you like to give us an example from your work?
Yes, of course. So, for instance, I mean, I don't have a specific example in this question, but for us, creativity is about transforming, let's say, plastic into all sorts of different types of materials. I mean, our principal idea is very simple, and it's common, that waste is a local resource, so we should use it like that. And by using, let's say, technology as a tool and not really as a solution, we try to explore different, let's say, possibilities. Possibilities from the sense of maybe innovation, possibilities from the sense of creative, let's say, visual outcomes. But in any case, we try to create, let's say, different qualities from the same material, because plastic is a very versatile material. We believe that it is a good material, that it's used in the wrong way. So we try to find the proper applications, and through the tools that we're using, we're trying to find unexpected ways of actually transforming this into something new, into like a new raw material and a new material that we can use for architectural or other furniture applications.
Thank you for that. And Evie?
Maybe I'll start with a disclaimer and say that, a third of what we do as new affiliates is large-scale installation and exhibition design. And there is a particular paradox in this kind of work, like you kind of revisit newness and again, we occupy large-scale institutions like 19th century mansions or, a former armory. So we constantly rewrite these spaces, and then we see everything trashed. And that produces a specific kind of guilt to us as makers and as specifiers of these materials. So in the context of this work, and after an invitation from an arts biennial called Performa in New York City, we devised this project that's called Drywall is Forever. And the project specifically was made out of drywall scraps collected from a series of exhibitions that closed within a specific month in New York City pre-pandemic in 2019. So essentially what we did was call everybody up in the dialogic way that Jaffer described in the beginning of this conversation, and just ask them, are you deinstalling? We're right in art forum, your exhibition is closing, can we come get some scraps? We got all of that and produced this new version of a white cube wall. And in so doing, we had the opportunity to imagine like a new aesthetic for this wall, right, where everything was not seamless, and where the sort of lettering survived or the joints became this other version of an ornament, and the space of art viewing was no longer completely objective or pretentiously new, even though we're all architects here and we all know none of it is new and none of it is seamless. Yeah, I think I'll leave it there.
Thank you.
Wow. Okay, so now we'll look some examples. Now, Ken Young said recently in our podcast interview that to teach young architects is you do it with motivation, and that's good, but you also need good examples. Now, would you please give us at least one example of your work that is based on the reuse of material or a building part, giving it a new life? And of course, here, Jaffer, I would love to see your mock-up project.
So Evie's described one project that we tend to use as an example. Another one maybe is, as you referenced, this project that we call test beds. And test beds, which we started in 2018, started with an observation that architectural mock-ups, which for those of you who don't know, are essentially large-scale one-to-one basically tests, and they can be for visual properties or performance properties. They're built out of the actual materials of the building at actual scale. So imagine just a corner of a building made out of like steel and glass and marble and stone, etc. As soon as they're reviewed, they're thrown away. And this is a $200 or $300 investment that's just trashed after a day of kind of looking at. And we thought that was sort of ridiculous, just in the sense that it produces both a lot of waste, but also involves a lot of investment in time and resources. So we wanted to think of a second lives or a second life for architectural mock-ups. At the same time, we were walking around the city noticing that a lot of the garden structures in community gardens in New York were in varying degrees of sort of dereliction, and they were sort of falling apart because they're made out of really cheap materials. So we had this idea that we would approach the Parks Department and say, hey, look, we would love to bring architectural mock-ups out of the trash to community gardens as anchor points or cornerstones to make little structures. And the structures that we're talking about include greenhouses, tool sheds, little outdoor living rooms. And amazingly, we were not laughed out of New York at that point. The Parks Department was incredibly generous and partnered with us on the project. So now we are working on our first pilot project, which is actually in construction while we are here, which is sort of terrifying because we're getting a lot of updates about it, working and not working, as always happens. But we're doing a pilot project where we took a piece of a high-rise building in Tribeca, New York, and brought it all the way to Queens, for those of you who know the city, near JFK Airport, and we're making it into this 3-part community shed. So that's my example with 2 seconds to spare.
Wow. George, what example would you like to share?
Okay, an example would be a project we just finished, and it's in Athens. We call it Spolia, because Spolia is this amazing word that came from my days as an architecture student in the history of architecture. You know, it's an age-old tradition of taking fragments of buildings and putting them in new structures. So you have a column inside, you know, holding up a chair, a Christian church, and this idea is something really old. It's not something new, of course. So Spolia, we took this word to describe the project, and it's for the Hellenic Institute of Culture in Paleopsychiko. It's a former Bodosaki residence. And they invited us to rearrange their outdoor spaces to use it for public events. When we visited the site, it was a little bit abandoned, but we were amazed that we found all this a pile of concrete columns of Ionic order from the 30s that were a part of a demolition from that project. And we said, okay, what is this? You know, we need to work with this. And it was very hard to convince the people, especially the people that were working with the budget, to use these columns and to transport them. It's a very heavy object, of course, because it's a concrete element. And so, you know, it was a dialogue, but it was a very intense dialogue. We convinced them in the end to do it. And now it has become really the identity of the project. We took the column, we placed it horizontally along the garden, and we sliced it up in pieces to expose the concrete, the materiality of the column that we, usually know that it's marble, but that was a concrete column. And this gesture, this very simple gesture, created an element that is now part of the new life of the garden, and it's appropriated by the visitors in multiple ways. Every Monday they have open lectures. You should go and see.
Great. And Panos?
Yeah, so our favorite project is it's called Print Your City, and it's actually a project that somehow it's not again the right video. It's a pity, but it's a project that actually concludes all our. It's a 360 overview of how we want things to run. So it's about like using plastic waste as a local material to build your public space. So it's about like creating a local factory in the city where citizens can actually come, bring their own plastic, be part of a participatory design process so that they can actually build part of their public space, maybe even choose also where it is. So it was an idea a bit visionary, a bit aiming high, but we were very lucky in 2018. We actually got the opportunity to realize it in a field of the city of Thessaloniki with clients the Coca-Cola company, implementation partner the city of Thessaloniki, where for 1 year we actually managed to have in the center of the city an experience center where people could actually come and learn. They could see live what was happening. There was an application where people could actually vote where things would be placed, or they could actually add some, let's say, features in the furniture or add colors, like simple things. But in any case, they were bringing their plastic, and at the end, the result was like in a radius of 15 kilometers, everything happened inside there. Like the plastic was collected by the city, it became a raw material, the citizens were actually throwing the plastic, they decided what it's going to be, the things were placed in the city, and it's a very good example of a hyper-local, let's say, application. Because usually what we do, our base is in Rotterdam, so we either have to export our, let's say, products. But sometimes this, let's say, it's in conflict with the whole concept of like really using plastic waste as a local resource. Anyway, we're very lucky that we actually made it before COVID changed our lives. And now we're doing the second chapter. So the last 2 months we are in Elefsina and we are doing the Print Your City also there. It's going to be smaller scale and trying new things. But yeah, this is a project that we really show as an example of how things would like to be done.
Wow, super.
Excellent, thank you so much. To wrap up this panel, I'll ask one question, one sentence to define new life in sustainable, zero-carbon architecture. Let's start with Panos.
Okay, architecture is, yeah, okay, maybe I'm not the right person, but for us it's definitely, yeah, circular, definitely local. I mean, locality is very important.
Excellent, thank you. Evie?
Perhaps one that is less insular, right? And one that engages different audiences. We've been talking to each other for too long.
I love this. And George?
I would say that it's about narrative because reuse has this itself is a story. It's like taking something from a place and treating it and placing it somewhere else. So I think it's above any form or any aesthetic. I think that's a story is always a better way to approach architecture.
Excellent. Thank you so much for this.
Great. Would you like to give a closing statement?
Yes, I mean, for me, my takeaway from this panel certainly was kind of reflected on how far we've come, actually, and it really jumped at me a mention that some of the reuse practices that we use today are not new anymore, and I quite like that, so I wanted to celebrate that sentence because I think it's worth to look back and say, okay, we have achieved something. There's a lot of work to still be done, certainly, but I think there's a lot of architects nowadays that are looking into sustainability.
Wow.
So
well, it's been fascinating, all these ideas we heard. What I would take is, I think we heard dialogue. I think we heard challenge and avoid challenge and flow. I liked what Jaffer said. And I think that in a world of sustainability, I think there's a lot of new opportunities. And I think that there's a great big opportunity, especially for the young architects and designers, to look for the new aesthetic, which is also sustainable. So thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you very much.